Hey there. Tonight, we begin our quiet shuffle through a world most would rather forget. A world of gaslight, shadows, crumbling cobblestones, and velvet curtains that never really kept out the cold. We're not here to sensationalize or shock. No, that would be far too exciting. Instead, we're going to ease our way into the life of a typical woman who worked in a Victorian brothel sometime around 1873. This is not a story of drama or rescue. It's a story of damp mornings, regulation corsets, and sighing softly at the sound of midnight foot traffic. So get cozy, dim your lights, maybe turn on a fan, or listen for that distant hum from your radiator. And if your pillow is properly plumped, we can begin. You are 21, though you look 30 and feel 45. Your name isn't important, at least not tonight. Names are tricky in your line of work. They change with the season, with the clientele, and sometimes with the mood of the madam. The door you use every evening is narrow and painted a tired gray. It sits beneath a gas lamp that flickers in the fog, like it's trying to remember a time it worked properly. The sign above it used to say something in gold paint, probably refreshments or tea, but now it's just a weather-worn plaque with flaking edges, faintly suggestive of disappointment. Behind this door is your world, or rather, the part of the world that claims you every evening and sometimes forgets to let you go by morning. This is not a glamorous house, not like the ones they whisper about in Mayfair with velvet chairs and imported perfume. No, this is a working house, practical, efficient, smelling faintly of soap coal and last week's gin. When you first came here, you were 18. You remember because the mattress still had some spring in it back then. Now it sighs as loudly as you do when you lie down. The woman who let you in, Madame Lutchfield, was a stern-faced former singer who claimed to have once been offered a role in Paris. Whether or not that was true, no one dared question it. She still keeps a cracked music box on her desk that plays half of a tune before giving up much like the rest of us. Your job is simple. Show up by 6. Wash if you can. Smile if you must. Try not to cough too hard. And for heaven's sake, never ask about the ledger. The evening always begins with warm water in a chipped bowl. It is not quite hot, but it's more welcoming than the air. There's a bar of soap for 5 girls, and it sits on the windowsill like a community heirloom. You dab your face, check your teeth, and decide the hair can stay pinned up. It's not that anyone looks closely. Your shift starts not with a bell, but with footsteps. They echo through the narrow hallway like someone is pacing above your ceiling, though you know it's just the old stairs creaking under boots. Customers arrive early on Thursdays. It's payday for some, and desperation day for others. The parlor is where you're meant to look presentable. This means cleanish and relatively upright. A velvet chair only slightly torn hosts your left elbow. You cross your ankles as taught, though the shoe on your right foot pinches something fierce, and you've considered simply hiding it behind the ficus. The ficus is fake. It has been fake for 3 years. You're fond of it. Madame Lutchfield does not shout. She beckons. One bony finger in the air, and it's your turn. You walk slowly, not seductively, just slowly, because the hem of your dress is fraying again, and caught on a loose board. You pass the mirror in the hallway, but do not look. There's no point in surprises tonight. The room upstairs has pink wallpaper. It was once lovely. Now it peels at the corners, like it too is tired of the work. The window is sealed shut, with old paint, but you can still hear the street, the sound of hooves, the clatter of a drunken man's laughter, and somewhere the distant call of someone selling oysters, always oysters, for reasons you've stopped wondering about. The man waiting is wearing a hat he refuses to remove. His boots are muddy, and his breath smells like he lost a bet. He says very little. You prefer that. Talking is what tires you the most. There is nothing glamorous about the work, and no one pretends there is. The sheets are clean-ish. The room is warm-ish. You count the ceiling cracks because they do not change and do not ask questions. You know the exact pattern above the left side of the bed, one long line, 3 short ones, and a water stain shaped vaguely like a fish. When it's over, you sit on the edge of the bed for a moment too long. Not dramatically, just long enough to stretch your back, adjust your corset, and tuck the small coin into your stocking. You do not look at him. He is already leaving, hat still on, and for that, you are grateful. Back downstairs, you return to the parlor. One girl is sewing a tear in her sleeve. Another is humming something off-key. Someone has taken the soap upstairs, and you don't ask who. The ficus remains unchanged. Outside, the fog has thickened. The gas lamp glows dull and yellow, like a tired eye watching the city breathe. Somewhere in the distance, a factory whistle blows. You feel it more than you hear it in your ribs and in your bones. You sit. You wait. You are called again. And so, the evening continues. The second time you're called that night, it's not for work exactly. It's for tea, or what passes for tea in Madame Lutchfield's house. The kettle was last properly scrubbed sometime during the reign of King William. and the tea itself is a grayish blend of leaves, dust, and faint resentment. But it's warm, and warm. Things are currency in this house. You carry your cup with 2 hands, not for elegance, but because the handle gets hot and sometimes breaks off without warning. You sit at the long table in the back room where the girls take turns pretending to eat. There are 6 of you tonight. Clara with the lopsided hair, Bet with the tooth gap, Meg, who coughs so much no one sits too close, and yet somehow still makes the most money. There's also Nell, who is not technically a worker, but helps clean the linens and sometimes brings news from the bakery next door. And then there's you. Quiet, watchful, the sort of person who knows not to ask about bruises or why the back door locks from the outside. Madame Lutchfield enters without ceremony, her skirts brushing the doorway with a sound like dead leaves. She carries a ledger under one arm and a small biscuit tin under the other. The tin contains exactly 3 biscuits, 1 for her, and 2 she'll offer to the quietest girls in the room. This is not kindness. This is strategy. She believes silence means loyalty, and loyalty earns crumbs. The rules of the house are unspoken, but heavily enforced. Rule 1. You do not speak of clients outside the walls. Rule 2. You do not refuse a client unless your leg is broken or you're bleeding visibly. Even then, it's discouraged. Rule 3. If you break something, you pay for it. If you cry, do it where no one sees. If you leave, you don't come back. These rules are not posted. They live in the gestures, in the way Madame raises an eyebrow or clicks her tongue. They live in the way the girls sit straighter when she passes, in how no one ever asks for seconds. Tonight, someone has broken Rule 4, the unspoken rule about scent. Each girl is allotted 1 small bottle of lavender water per month to be applied sparingly. But someone, possibly Clara, has been heavy-handed. The room reeks of crushed flowers and panic. Madame Lutchfield sniffs the air like a bloodhound and narrows her eyes. Economy, she says, not as a suggestion, but a reprimand. If you want to smell like a cathedral, you'll pay like one. No one speaks. You sip your tea and stare at the oil lamp, watching the flame wobble. Clara looks down at her lap, where her hands are fidgeting with a thread on her hem. Later, someone will whisper that Clara had a gentleman caller from the dockyards who gave her a whole shilling, and she used it to buy a better scent from the apothecary. Later still, she will say she regrets it. But for now, the air is thick with lavender and caution. After tea, it's back to the parlor. The lamp is lower now, casting long shadows on the walls that make the place look almost elegant if you squint. Meg is lighting another stick of incense in an attempt to balance the lavender disaster, and Bet is playing with the lace on her gloves, which she never removes, even during work. You return to your velvet chair and resume your position, ankles crossed, hands folded loosely in your lap. You do not slouch. Slouching suggests weariness, and weariness is unattractive. The street outside has grown louder. The pubs are emptying. Boots echo against cobblestones, and someone is singing off-key about a girl named Mary. You don't know the song, but the melody is familiar, the kind that's meant to be sung through ale. Another client arrives. This one has a mustache so large it seems to enter the room before he does. He is accompanied by a friend equally loud, both wearing coats that smell of wet wool and tobacco. Madame Lutchfield steps in and does what she always does. When the evening reaches this pitch, she smiles with her mouth and not her eyes. Gentlemen, she says we have just the thing. Her hand gestures loosely toward the room, like a merchant offering wares. The men look over the girls like they're browsing fabric. Pinch. Here, poke there, consider the color. You don't flinch. You know this part. It's a game of waiting and pretending. One of them picks Meg. The other hesitates, then points to Bet, who nods without blinking. They vanish up the stairs, laughing about something no one else finds funny. You stay put. It's not your turn. Not yet. The fire in the grate is struggling. You consider feeding it one of the newspapers stacked near the corner, but they're last week's, and Madame likes to read the classifieds aloud when she's bored. Man seeks wife with own income and mild disposition, she'll say, before scoffing and muttering good luck. It's almost a ritual now. You know most of the ads by heart. One even mentions a missing parrot, still unfound after 3 months. You like to imagine the parrot flew somewhere better. The clock ticks. Someone coughs. The tea from earlier is now a faint sour note in your stomach, but it's better than nothing. You shift your weight. Your back aches from sitting, but standing makes it worse. The chair beneath you is shaped like a question mark, designed more for posture than comfort. It has a loose spring that squeaks when you move, so you don't. Another set of footsteps. Lighter this time, possibly a first-timer. You can always tell. They knock too softly, as if still unsure. The door opens. Nell ushers them in her apron, stained from helping with laundry. The newcomer is young. Too young, you think, wearing a hat too big for his head, and shoes too polished for this neighborhood. He looks around like he's lost, or hoping he is. Madame Lutchfield approaches her smile, now softer, adjusted for the occasion. She speaks to him gently, asking if he's come for warmth companionship, or simply curiosity. He stammers something about just passing through, which is a phrase that means everything and nothing in this place. You remain seated, eyes lowered, letting the moment pass over you like a breeze that chooses another path. Madame does not point him toward you. She knows your type. You are reserved, quiet, best for the ones who want silence and something that feels like mercy. This boy is not ready for that. He is guided toward Clara instead, who smiles with practiced sweetness and offers him a cup of water from the chipped glass. You close your eyes for a moment, not from sleep, but from the weight of it all. The room hums. Upstairs, footsteps creak. Below the kettle is refilling. Beside you, the ficus stands as always slightly dusty and entirely fake. And just as the clock chimes the half-hour, you hear your name called once more. You rise as your name is spoken, not loudly, but with just enough authority to suggest that hesitation would be noticed. You smooth your skirts without looking down and adjust the pin that keeps your collar from collapsing into your blouse. Your shoes click softly across the worn floorboards, the sound muffled by years of ash and foot traffic. The other girls glance up, not with envy or concern, but with a kind of resigned acknowledgement, as if your turn simply means theirs is postponed. The boy, still seated beside Clara, watches you with the innocent, unknowing eyes of someone who hasn't yet realized how much of himself he's about to leave behind. You offer him no glance in return. You've learned not to. The hallway smells of starch and gaslight. A single candle flickers in a wall, sconce its flame, fighting the dampness that seeps into every corner of the house. You pass the staircase and take the second door on the left, the blue room. It is called that. Not because it is decorated in any particularly coherent theme of blue, but because of a faded curtain that hangs crookedly beside the window, and the fact that someone once spilled Prussian ink on the rug. Names tend to stick here, even if they make no real sense. The blue room is slightly warmer than the others. The small fireplace in the corner is stubborn, and the chimney doesn't draw properly, but someone possibly. Nell must have coaxed it to life earlier. The smell of coal is thick, but not unpleasant. It masks other scents. You step inside and close the door behind you, turning the handle gently to avoid the click that might seem too final. Inside, the man is already seated, not on the bed, but on the upholstered chair beside the fireplace. He's older than most, perhaps 45, perhaps just prematurely worn out. His coat is draped neatly over the back of the other chair, and his gloves sit folded on the table beside a pocket watch and a small tin of lozenges. These details tell you more than his face. He is tidy, not wealthy, but deliberate. He stands as you enter out of habit, perhaps, or politeness, long since beaten down to a reflex. You nod slightly. Not a curtsy, just enough to suggest presence. The room is quiet, save for the ticking of his watch, steady and slow. He doesn't speak right away, and you're grateful. Some of them start with words, questions, flattery, nervous babble. He does not. Instead, he gestures lightly toward the bed, then toward the chair. He is offering you the seat, which you take without comment. There is a routine to these things, a choreography that changes only slightly from partner to partner. Some expect a performance. Some wish to be ignored. Some don't know what they want until you show them what they don't. This man, though, seems content just to look at the fire for a while. You sit still, not out of obedience, but because movement here feels unnecessary. The room is warm, and warmth encourages stillness. After a few minutes, he speaks not a request, not a name, just a sentence that floats without anchor. I used to live above a fishmonger's, he says, as if you might know which one. You nod, because that is the role. He continues. The smell would rise through the floorboards every morning. I can't stand fish now. You nod again, slower. He is not drunk, but he speaks like someone who wants to forget something and keeps accidentally remembering other things instead. You rise not quickly and walk to the wash basin. The water is lukewarm, but clean enough. You dip the edge of a cloth, wring it gently, and press it to your neck. You do not look in the mirror. The man watches you in the quiet way that men sometimes do when they're not sure what they've paid for. After another moment, he stands too. There's no urgency in him, only a kind of soft determination. He removes his waistcoat and unbuttons his sleeves with the concentration of someone solving a minor puzzle. You do not help. You wait. He finally crosses the room and sits beside you on the bed. The mattress sinks slightly, predictably, and he places both hands on his knees, as if unsure whether to fold them or raise them. When he finally touches your hand, it is with a gentleness that surprises you. Not because it is rare gentleness, like violence appears without warning in this place, but because it is sustained. He doesn't pull. He just holds. and for a long moment, nothing else happens. You sit side by side, his thumb brushing the back of your hand like a priest reading Braille. You feel his breath shift steady, but tired. There's something hollow about it, as if he's been talking to himself in empty rooms, and only just found another person to share the echo. Eventually, he moves closer. The rest plays out as expected, quietly, quickly, without embellishment. He is courteous in the way that suggests guilt rather than chivalry. When he's finished, he remains seated, shirt still unbuttoned, looking at the hearth as if it might answer something for him. You don't speak. You gather your things, straighten your bodice, and place a small cloth over the mark left on the bedspread. You've done this often enough that your fingers move before your mind catches up. He hands you a coin without looking, and you take it without counting. You both know it's not generous, but not insulting either. It's a middle ground coin. A thank you, but please forget me coin. As you leave the room, the warmth follows you for a moment into the hallway before retreating behind the door like a well-trained pet. The parlor is dimmer now. The lamp's wick has shrunk, and the shadows are longer. Clara is still with the boy. Meg is not yet back. Bet has removed one glove, which usually means her patience is wearing thin. You return to your chair. The ficus, ever loyal, has not moved. You lean back just slightly enough to let your shoulders rest against the worn cushion. The ache in your back is sharper now, curling upward like a snake that prefers your left shoulder. Your stomach grumbles, but no one hears it over the creak of the stairs and the distant thud of boots at the threshold. The front door opens again. Another client enters. You close your eyes for a breath and open them just as the bell chimes once more from the hallway. Not a bell for tea, but a bell that means the madam is summoning someone. And from the pattern of the chime, you know it is you. You rise again when the chime calls your name this time, without looking at anyone else in the room. The others don't speak. It's past the hour when idle conversation seems appropriate, and even if someone were inclined to say something, a joke, a wish of luck, a quiet complaint, it would only disappear into the thick, unspoken understanding that comes with repetition. You know the way to the third room upstairs, the one near the crooked window, with the latch that never quite closes. It's not called anything poetic, like the blue room. It's just referred to as the one with the scratchy curtains. The curtains, of course, are still there. Floral faded, and possessing a texture that seems designed to discourage touch. The man waiting in the room is one you've seen before. Not recently, but enough times that his presence draws a small muscle memory from your spine. His name is Mr. Elborn, or at least that's what he gave on his first visit. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. Most names in this house are temporary, like borrowed hats that get returned slightly misshapen. He is dressed, as he always is, in a gray suit with a red waistcoat, the latter showing signs of fraying along the edges. His hands are clean, always meticulously so, and he carries a faint smell of mint and pipe smoke. He does not greet you, not out of rudeness, but ritual. With Mr. Elborn, the proceedings are predictably calm. He prefers consistency. The room has already been set up to his liking. One candle on the dresser, one pillow propped against the headboard, a single coin placed on the small table beside the chair, not offered, but displayed as if to say, "We both understand the terms." You close the door and do not ask how he's been. He does not ask how you are. He reaches into his coat and removes a small cloth pouch which he places beside the coin. This is new. Your eyes flick to it, then back to him, but he offers no explanation. He sits on the edge of the bed, his posture upright and vaguely academic, like a man preparing to lecture about something he neither believes nor disbelieves. You remain standing. He gestures faintly toward the pouch, and after a moment, you pick it up. It's soft in your hand, the fabric worn and slightly warm from his pocket. Inside are two glass marbles, both cloudy and faintly blue. You turn them over in your palm. They are ordinary things, small and out of place here. But Mr. Elborn watches as if their presence means something larger. "They belonged to my brother," he says, his voice lower than usual. You do not ask what happened to the brother. You nod and set them down gently beside the coin. His expression does not change, but something in his shoulders eases. He removes his jacket, carefully folding it over the chair like someone placing a flag. He undoes his waistcoat, next then his boots, all in quiet sequence. You step toward the wash basin, pour a little water from the pitcher, and soak the cloth again. Though this time you don't use it. You simply hold it in your hand, waiting. Mr. Elborn lies back on the bed without ceremony, eyes open and fixed on the ceiling. He does not reach for you. Not yet. He talks instead, as he often does. Little things. The weather, his walk to the house, the way his landlady recently began putting too much salt in the stew. You sit beside him, not on the bed, but on the stool near the fireplace. There's no fire in this room tonight, just the chilled air sneaking through the window and settling around your ankles. He talks about a train ride to Bath, how he dislikes the way the windows smudge during fog, how people pretend not to stare at one another while doing precisely that. His words flow like a man pouring tea too slowly, not out of caution, but because there is nothing else to do. Eventually, he quiets. You stand across the small space and ease onto the bed beside him. He reaches for your hand, the left one, the same hand he always chooses. His grip is not firm, just familiar. He closes his eyes and breathes once, then again, longer. There is no motion beyond that. He remains still, your hand in his, the candle flickering shadows across the ceiling. You do not move either. The routine with Mr. Elborn is not about touch or pleasure. It's about stillness, about pretending the world is momentarily paused. After what could be minutes or hours, he sits up, slow and deliberate, and reaches for his coat. The pouch remains where you placed it. You consider handing it back, but something in his silence says he has no need for it anymore. He buttons his coat, adjusts his collar, and leaves without a word, the door clicking softly behind him. You wait until his footsteps reach the landing before standing. The coin is still on the table. You slip it into your pocket without counting. Downstairs, the parlor is mostly empty. Bet is nodding off in her chair, chin tucked to chest, and Nell is wiping down the edge of the fireplace with a cloth that used to be white. Madame Lutchfield is absent, likely in the back room, with her ledger and her cracked music box. The ficus looks no different, though someone has draped a shawl over its pot, likely in an attempt to hide the chip along its base. You return to your seat and exhale slowly. The night is not yet over. Outside, the fog is heavier, pressed against the windows, like a forgotten pillow. A soft knock at the front door startles no one. Nell moves to open it. You don't bother looking up. You already know from the rhythm of the knock and the shuffle of shoes that it's not someone new, but someone else you've seen before. Someone who always asks for the back room, the one with the dark wallpaper and the mirror that tilts slightly left. Someone who never remembers your name, but always asks if you're the same girl from last time. Someone who steps inside with the confidence of a man used to repeating his mistakes. He always arrives near the end of the shift, when the room smells of burnt lamp oil and the floor creaks louder under weary footsteps. He does not remove his coat, though it is damp from the fog. He doesn't even shake it off. He just stands in the hallway for a moment, eyes scanning the parlor, like he's searching for a misplaced item rather than a person. Nell closes the door behind him with the same resigned care she uses when returning a dish to the cupboard, habitual unthinking. He walks past you without acknowledgement, then stops, turns, and says, "It's you again, isn't it?" It isn't a question, though it sounds like one. He doesn't remember your name. He never has, but he always remembers your face. Or more accurately, he remembers the version of your face that he's created in his head. You nod, not because it's true. He's asked at least 2 other girls the same thing over the past month, but because correcting him would lead to conversation. And you don't want that. He smiles slightly, as if confirming something to himself. "I'll take her," he says. To no one in particular, though Madame Lutchfield has emerged from the back room just in time to hear it. She nods, as if to say of course, and vanishes again into the folds of shadow and ledger ink. You follow him to the back room, which is the only one with wallpaper dark enough to feel like velvet in the candlelight. The mirror is indeed still tilted left, and it reflects the room in a way that makes everything look like it's leaning away from itself. He moves to the bed immediately, not to sit, but to lean against the post, his hands in his coat pockets. "You remember me, don't you?" he says. "It's the start of a game you've played before." He wants to be recognized not for who he is, but for the idea of him that he carries. He wants to believe he matters to someone here, even if that someone must pretend. Of course, you say, though your voice is flat by design. Anything too warm would be misread. Anything too cold would be punished in small, indirect ways. A rough grip, a withheld coin, a lingering insult dressed as a joke. He shrugs out of his coat, finally tossing it onto the chair without care. It lands half on, half off, like an afterthought. He doesn't sit right away. Instead, he begins to talk. He always talks. Tonight, it's about his brother-in-law, who's lost money gambling and now comes begging at his door. "Thinks I'm made of gold," he mutters. "Thinks I just sit around counting shillings." You sit at the edge of the bed, back straight, hands folded loosely in your lap. You know your cues by now. He'll speak for several minutes, sometimes longer, and during this time, he wants no response beyond occasional eye contact and the occasional nod. He will not notice if your eyes drift toward the mirror or the fading outline of a handprint on the wallpaper. Eventually, he removes his shoes one at a time with the heavy sighs of someone who wishes someone else would do it for him. He lies back on the bed with a groan, not from pain, but from anticipation of being relieved of the weight he's placed on himself. He doesn't reach for you yet. He lies there for a moment longer, staring at the ceiling. Do you ever think about just leaving? He asks suddenly. The question surprises you, not because of its content, but because of its direction. He is not a man who invites answers. You don't respond. Silence is easier and often misinterpreted as wisdom. I do, he says. Just walk away. Take a train somewhere. Change my name. You wonder if he realizes he's describing what many of the girls here have already done at least once. You consider the irony, but keep your expression neutral. He turns his head toward you. Would you come with me? The line is one you've heard before, though not always from him. You smile, the kind that doesn't reach your eyes. Where would we go? You ask, your voice quiet, but even. He shrugs. Doesn't matter. Just somewhere else. He closes his eyes, and you know what's coming next. He will reach for your hand, not to hold, but to feel the presence of something warm, something human. Then the rest will follow, slowly, at first, then with increasing insistence, a rhythm built more on habit than desire. When it's over, he doesn't move right away. He lies there, one arm flung across his forehead like a forgotten statue. You rise carefully, adjusting your skirts and stepping around the uneven floorboard near the foot of the bed. He murmurs something you don't catch, and you don't ask him to repeat it. The coin he leaves is smaller than usual, and it rolls off the table before you can catch it. You bend to retrieve it, brushing dust from the edge of the floorboards. He is already half-dressed by the time you stand again. As he buttons his shirt, he glances at the mirror. Still crooked, he says more to himself than to you. Then he collects his coat and leaves footsteps fading into the hush of the hallway. You remain in the room for a minute longer than necessary, letting the quiet settle like dust. You pick up the candle to blow it out, then pause, watching the flame dance for a few seconds. It flickers, like everything here, bright, one moment, then faltering. You finally extinguish it and step out into the corridor. Back downstairs, the air has shifted. The night is inching toward morning, though no one says so. It announces itself through the creak of joints, the droop of shoulders, the way Nell stares at her broom without moving. Madame Lutchfield is once again at the table with her ledger, the cracked music box playing its half-tune like a lullaby for the disillusioned. You return to your chair. The others are silent. Some are asleep, others merely still. Outside, the fog has thinned, but hasn't left. It never really does. A low hum comes from the street, possibly a cart passing by, or the groan of the city settling into itself before the next day begins. You rest your hands in your lap and close your eyes, not to sleep, but just to escape the room for a moment. In your mind, the mirror upstairs is finally straight, and someone is asking if you remember them, not because they hope to be someone special, but because they hope you do not. And just as your shoulders begin to loosen, the front door creaks open once more. There is no knock this time, only the slow, deliberate step of someone who knows the way. Someone whose name you may not know, but whose scent and stride are already familiar. Someone whose voice will reach your ears before the next candle is lit. The footsteps are slow, but not uncertain. There's a kind of weariness in them that suggests this isn't his first visit, nor will it be his last. You open your eyes and wait, not because you expect your name to be called again, but because you already know it will be. There are patterns in this house that run deeper than the wallpaper and more reliable than the chime of the hallway clock. The door swings open without urgency, and the man who steps in is already removing his gloves, as if the decision has been made on his walk over. His coat is damp at the shoulders, the wool clinging to itself in faint ridges, and his hair is still wet, pressed flat against his forehead, like a boy who forgot his cap in the rain. He is not tall, nor especially memorable in appearance, but he carries himself with the gravity of someone who's been quiet for too long. He doesn't speak, not at first. Madame Lutchfield appears in the doorway behind him, gives you the smallest of nods, and disappears again, without comment. She knows, as you do, that some men prefer not to be announced. You rise your body moving without complaint, though the muscles in your back protest with the stiffness of too many hours in one chair. He stands aside as you pass, and together you make your way back up the stairs, past the blue room, past the crooked mirror, to the last door at the end of the hallway, the small one with the uneven threshold and the draft that slips in no matter how tightly it's shut. He pauses as you unlock it, though you do not know why he hesitates. Inside the room is colder than the others, barely touched by heat. There's a chair by the window that no one sits in a table with a shallow bowl holding 3 dried flower heads and a length of ribbon that might once have been red. He doesn't look at any of this. Instead, he walks to the edge of the bed and begins to unbutton his shirt. Methodical fingers, working with practiced slowness, as if this too is part of the ritual. You close the door behind you and step to the washstand. There's no fresh water, only the remains from the last visit, lukewarm, tinged with soap, but enough. You soak the cloth again this time, using it on your hands first. The scent of lye and linen clings faintly to your fingertips. He's seated now, elbows on his knees, watching the floor, with the kind of focus usually reserved for confession. When he speaks, it is low and careful, as though trying not to wake something in himself. "I had a dog once," he says, and it sounds like the beginning of a different story. Brown, short legs, ate everything. You nod, because that is what's expected. He does not look up. Named her Daphne. She died chewing through a boot. The pause afterward is not for your benefit. It's for his own mind, pacing through a memory he probably doesn't revisit often. "I buried her under the apple tree," he adds, almost to himself. You cross the room slowly, not interrupting. He doesn't reach for you. Instead, he shifts back on the bed and leans against the headboard legs stretched out in front of him, arms crossed. He is not here for what most come for. That much is clear. You sit on the corner of the bed and wait. Some clients talk. Some confess. Some simply want the weight of another person nearby. He seems like the type who carries too many thoughts and doesn't know where to set them down. Do you ever think about how things used to smell different? He asks suddenly, eyes now on the ceiling. Before the trains, before the factories, just wood smoke and bread. You think of the parlor, the mixture of lavender water and coal ash, the faint stink of old wool and worn leather. You nod, even though your memories of clean air are few and unreliable. He lies back fully, now folding one arm under his head. His other hand rests loosely at his side, palm up, as if offering something invisible. You take it gently. His fingers are cold, but still. You sit there, hand in hand, listening to the quiet hum of the room. Somewhere downstairs, the front door creaks again, but neither of you react. The hour is late or early, depending on how you measure time in a place where night and work end only when the last man leaves. Eventually, he breathes in as if waking and lets go of your hand. "That's enough," he says. Not cruel, not dismissive, just final. You nod, standing, as he begins to dress again. No rush, no disorder. Everything returns to its place. He leaves the payment on the corner of the table, not looking at you as he opens the door. But before he steps out, he pauses. "Do you have a name?" he asks. It's the first time he's posed the question. You consider lying, giving one of the usual ones, May Elsie Dora. The names Madame prefers. But instead, you offer him the real one, or at least the one you think you still remember. He repeats it once under his breath, testing the shape of it, like a foreign word. Then he nods, almost to himself, and walks out. You stand in the cold room a while longer, listening to his footsteps fade down the stairs, waiting until the latch clicks closed behind him before collecting the coin. It's more than usual, though. You doubt he knows it. Back downstairs, the parlor has emptied. Only Nell remains, nodding off beside the hearth, with a rag still in her hand. You settle back into your chair, the cushion now cool from absence. The ficus stands quiet as ever. You look toward the window and see that the fog is thinning into pale streaks like breath on cold glass. Somewhere a rooster calls too early. You hear the clink of mugs from the kitchen. Madame Lutchfield is up again, boiling the same water from the same kettle, preparing the first tea of the new day. And just as you begin to shift your weight, ready to remove your shoes, you hear the soft click of the lock being turned once more. The door opens, not with urgency, but with familiarity. A new pair of shoes crosses the threshold. Or perhaps they are not new at all. You don't raise your head yet. You wait for the next name to be spoken, the next candle to be lit, the next hour to begin where the last one left off. You hear the sound before you see him, 2 measured steps, then a tap. 2 more, then another tap. It's not loud, but it cuts through the room in a way that makes the candlelight feel a touch more alert. The man entering carries a cane not as an accessory, but as necessity. You know the rhythm well by now. He's been here before, always, around this hour, always after the last of the drunkards have been turned away, and the fire in the hearth has shrunk into an ember's memory of itself. You remain seated until you hear him speak, not a greeting, but a statement. She's here, he says, and it's not a question. Madame Lutchfield, who has returned from the kitchen with a damp cloth and a cup of something steaming, doesn't look up from her ledger. End of the hall, she says. He turns toward you, and though his face is in shadow, you can tell his expression hasn't changed since the last time. He does not smile. He does not nod. He simply waits. You rise. Your feet ache now, in a deeper way. Not sharp, but a dull pull from ankle to hip, the kind that lingers even after a full night's rest, if such a thing were ever granted here. You follow him up the stairs, not side by side, but with just enough distance to match his slower pace. Tap, step, step, tap. The floorboards creak in a familiar tune beneath you. The room he favors is the one beside the storeroom, the smallest of the upper chambers, but the quietest. It has no window, no draught, and only one chair, slightly too low for proper posture. He enters first, as always, and leans his cane against the wall by the door. Then he turns to you and holds out his hand, not for payment, for balance. You help him sit on the edge of the bed, watching the way he lowers himself carefully with the attention of someone whose knees no longer make promises. Once he's seated, he exhales through his nose, a sound that's not quite a sigh, not quite a breath. You step to the washstand again, going through the motions. Not because they're needed, but because routine has a rhythm of its own here, and breaking it feels like knocking something loose in the ceiling. He speaks without looking up. "I saw a boy lose his shoes today," he says. "Chased a tram down the hill, stepped right out of them, kept running." You murmur something soft, non-committal. He doesn't expect a reply, but the sound of your voice is part of the pattern. "He was laughing," he adds, as though this detail alters the meaning of the story. You take the cloth to his hands, first dabbing at the knuckles where the skin is dry and speckled with small marks. He does not pull away. They say the world's moving faster. He says his eyes on the candle. But I don't feel it. Feels slower, if anything. You nod again, barely. You know he comes here not for pleasure, not even for comfort exactly, but to be still in the company of someone who won't ask him to prove anything. When you first met, he asked your name, and you gave him the one you use only when you feel a little more yourself. Since then, he has not used it aloud, but you know he remembers it. He calls you girl, or you never, coldly, just as if language were too brittle to handle names properly. Tonight, he doesn't lie back. He sits upright, shoulders hunched, hands on his thighs. You sit beside him on the bed, close enough that your skirts touch, but not more. He reaches into his coat, which he hasn't yet removed, and pulls out a folded paper. "You like music?" he asks. You say yes, though you don't offer specifics. He nods, unfolding the paper carefully. It's a flyer, crumpled and torn along one edge. A concert advertisement, some hall uptown, something with violins, and a woman's name written in looping ink. "I knew her once," he says. "Long ago." You wait, not sure if he will elaborate, but he doesn't. Instead, he folds the paper again this time into smaller quarters and slips it into the pocket of his waistcoat. The room is quiet now, save for the tick of the small clock on the dresser. He takes off his coat, finally setting it on the bed beside him. Then he does something different. He reaches out and touches your wrist, not your hand, not your shoulder, but your wrist fingers, resting just above the bone. "You're tired," he says. Not a question. You nod before you can stop yourself. He presses gently, not a squeeze more, a gesture of acknowledgement. Do you ever think of stopping? He asks. It's a strange thing to hear from someone who contributes to the very thing he's asking about. You don't answer. He doesn't expect you to. The question hangs there between the two of you, like a coat left on a hook, waiting to be claimed. He lies back then, slowly wincing as his hip touches the mattress. You help him ease into the pillow, and he closes his eyes without further words. You sit with him, as always, watching his chest rise and fall, the breath steady practiced. He doesn't ask for anything more. When enough time has passed 10 minutes, maybe 20, he opens his eyes, reaches for your hand again, and says, I think I'm ready. You help him sit up, then stand. He dresses slowly. You straighten the bed behind him, smoothing the sheet. When he turns to leave, he doesn't take his cane immediately. He places a coin on the table, but also something else, a button worn smooth, threaded with a scrap of green cloth. He does not explain. You do not ask. When the door clicks shut behind him, the air shifts back into its usual hush. You pocket the coin, leave the button. It feels like it belongs here now. Back downstairs, the parlor is nearly dark. Nell has gone. Madame Lutchfield has retired behind the curtain. The fire is out. You sit once more, the chair still faintly warm. You rub your wrist without thinking. Outside, the street is beginning to stir. A cart rattles past. The sky outside the soot-fogged window is shifting from charcoal to the faintest trace of pewter. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaks, perhaps another visitor, or just the house stretching its old frame. You close your eyes again, not to sleep, but to listen. There it is. Footsteps. Coming back down the hall. Not urgent, not new, but familiar. Someone else who always comes just after the man with the cane. The footsteps are soft, like someone trying not to be noticed, though there's no real need for stealth at this hour. The parlor is almost empty, not by design, but by attrition. The others have drifted off to their corners, some to rest, some to wash, one likely to write a letter that will never be sent. The lamp by the hearth gutters faintly, and you resist the urge to trim the wick. You know he likes it this way. He enters without knocking, his coat smelling faintly of flour and burnt crust, his cheeks red from the morning air, though it's not cold enough yet to justify that color. He wears no hat. He never does. His hair always looks slightly windswept, like a man who walks faster than his thoughts. The first time he came, he brought a roll still warm, wrapped in paper, handed to you without a word. You hadn't known what to do with it, and he hadn't waited to see. Now he brings nothing, but there is still something of the baker in him, a kind of warmth that lingers near his skin, even when his hands are cold. He doesn't speak right away. He rarely does. You rise before Madame. Madame has a chance to appear. The baker needs no announcement. He steps aside to let you pass, then follows you up the stairs with the quiet certainty of a man who does this every few days, but still treats it like something new. You take him to the middle room, this time the one with the basin that leaks and the window that sticks. He doesn't mind. He never chooses. Inside, he hesitates just beyond the door, the way people do when they're unsure whether to sit or stand or simply exist. You light the candle on the sill, though the room is already catching the pale spill of morning light. He steps out of his shoes carefully, like a man trying not to wake someone. His socks are mismatched. They always are. One has a hole near the toe. He notices your glance and shrugs. The left foot's unlucky anyway, he says. You smile just slightly. It's not the first time he's said it. He sits on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees, rubbing his hands together like he's working dough that doesn't exist. You stand beside him, hands folded, waiting. He doesn't touch you. He never does right away. Instead, he begins to talk not about the city or the weather or anything weighty, but about the bakery. We burned 4 loaves this morning, he says. Forgot the second turn of the oven. Whole place smelled like charcoal. You nod, picturing the ovens, the clatter of trays, the sound of dough being slapped onto floured boards. He continues. Maggie, she's the new girl, tried to pretend she hadn't noticed, said it was a new recipe, called it crust forward. He smiles, then a small one tilted and reluctant. You sit beside him, not quite touching. He turns his head, slightly looking at your hands. You don't wear a ring, he says. You shake your head. He nods, as if confirming a fact he already suspected. Good, he says, though he doesn't explain what he means. You don't ask. He leans back slowly, not to lie down, but just to shift the weight from his knees to his shoulders. The bed creaks familiar and patient. He watches the ceiling. I dreamed about a house last night, he says. Not mine. Bigger. With chickens out back and a stream that froze in the winter. I think it was someone else's memory. You glance at him, unsure if he's joking. He isn't. His voice has the flat tone of someone genuinely confused by his own imagination. "I don't even like chickens," he adds. You say nothing. He doesn't expect commentary. He lies back fully, then hands behind his head, one foot still on the floor. He doesn't ask for anything, not a gesture, not a kiss, not a reassurance, just your presence. You lie beside him, careful not to disturb the rhythm of the mattress. He turns his head toward you, watching your profile. "Do you believe in second lives?" he asks. You think about it for a moment. Then you nod. It seems easier than explaining why you don't. He closes his eyes. "Maybe I was a miller," he murmurs. "Maybe that's why I'm always tired." You don't correct him. Everyone here is tired. It's not a mystery. After a while, his breathing slows. Not sleep, but something close, a kind of resting that people allow themselves only when they're near someone who won't ask questions. You stay there, not because he holds you, but because neither of you feels like moving. When he finally sits up, it's with a grunt and a small apology. "Time to proof the rye," he says. He stands, gathers his coat, slips on the mismatched socks and shoes, and steps toward the door. He hesitates, then reaches into his coat and pulls out a small linen pouch. "For you," he says, handing it over. You take it, opening the drawstring. Inside are 3 buttons each, shaped like a flower, clearly hand-carved. "We used to use these on the aprons," he explains. "Too fancy for the uniform now. Figured they'd be happier somewhere else." He doesn't wait for thanks. He never does. When he leaves the room, feels oddly balanced, like nothing was taken, only shared. You hold the pouch in your hand for a moment longer before tucking it into your bodice beside the coin from the man with the cane. Downstairs, the parlor is brighter now. The fog outside has begun to lift. Madame Lutchfield is pouring tea again, humming a broken tune under her breath. Nell is sweeping through. The floor is no cleaner than before. You sit once more, the same chair, the same cushion, the same angle of light across the carpet. You look toward the window, toward the street beginning to wake. Another cart rolls by this one, carrying coal. Somewhere a bell rings in the distance, possibly a chapel, possibly a bakery oven timer. You close your eyes and feel the pouch against your ribs. Then you hear it. The hinge of the front door, the scrape of another pair of boots, the quiet intake of breath from someone just stepping inside. Not rushing, not new. Someone you've seen before, but not in some time. Someone who used to come on Thursdays. Always 'Rain or clear feast or famine, a quiet man in a dark coat with gloves he never removed, and eyes that seemed permanently cast downward. You hadn't seen him in weeks, perhaps longer. Time becomes abstract in a place like this, where every day carries the same scent, the same voices, the same rituals looping like a threadbare song. Yet here he is again, stepping across the threshold, like a man returning to a room he left mid-sentence. He stands just inside the doorway, letting his eyes adjust, though nothing in the room has changed. You don't move right away. Neither does he. Madame Lutchfield notices him first, closing her ledger without sound, her hand resting briefly on the ink blotter, as if weighing something unspoken. Then she turns and gives the smallest nod. It's all it takes. You rise. Slowly, feeling the pressure on your knees from too many hours folded, too many mornings, bleeding into afternoons. He watches you approach, but doesn't smile. He never did. That was part of his presence, not unfriendly, just absent of unnecessary emotion. You walk ahead of him without speaking. He follows at a respectful distance, as always. There's no rush, no pretense, just the quiet procession up the stairs, one step at a time, the floorboard near the top, creaking like an old cough that never quite goes away. You lead him to the green room, not often used, mostly because the wallpaper is peeling in one corner and the curtain rod has been repaired with wire and stubborn hope. Still, it's clean, and the mattress doesn't sag too much. He enters after you and closes the door with the same care someone might use to seal a book they've read too many times. He doesn't speak. You move to the wash basin not for ceremony, but because you always do. It gives the moment a shape. He takes off his gloves, one at a time, folding them, and placing them gently on the chair by the window. Then he unbuttons his coat. Slowly, deliberately, as if each button were a memory he's trying to place back where it belongs. When he finally speaks, his voice is hoarse, like a book left too long in a damp drawer. "You remember me?" he asks, not accusingly, just curious. You nod once. "I was gone," he says, unnecessarily. "You both know." He sits on the edge of the bed and rests his hands on his thighs, looking down at his boots, which are scuffed but recently polished. "I got work outside the city," he says. "For a while. Didn't last." He doesn't elaborate. You don't press. Men like him come and go. Some never return. Some do, but changed. He seems neither better nor worse. just returned. You sit across from him, your hands folded loosely in your lap. The candle on the mantel flickers slightly in a draft from the loose window pane, casting your silhouettes onto the opposite wall like faint echoes. He glances up. "Did anyone ask about me?" he asks. The question is strange, out of place, almost childlike in its vulnerability. You hesitate, then shake your head gently. No one ever does. His mouth twitches, not quite a smile, not quite a frown. "Didn't think so," he says. "Just wondered." He shrugs off his coat and lays it beside him. His shirt is buttoned all the way to the top. He does not undo it. Instead, he reaches into the pocket and removes a small object, a handkerchief folded into a square wrapped around something. He holds it out. "For you," he says. You take it and unfold it carefully. Inside is a brass thimble, worn smooth at the edges, with a dent near the rim. You turn it over in your palm. "Found it in a field," he says. "Don't sew." "Figured you might." You don't sew either. Not anymore. But you nod and tuck it into your apron pocket beside the buttons and the pouch and the coin. You both sit in silence for a while. He leans back on the bed, not lying down, just bracing himself with his arms like a man on a porch, watching a storm approach. "It's strange, isn't it?" he says. "How a place can feel exactly the same even when you're not in it." You nod again. It is strange. He lies back, finally, arms folded across his chest. "I used to dream about this room," he says, not in a bad way, just familiar, like a place I was supposed to be. You sit beside him, the bed creaking in protest. He doesn't look at you, just watches the ceiling like he's waiting for it to blink. His breathing slows. "I thought maybe I'd stay gone," he says, "but it kept pulling me back. Not sure why." You don't respond. You've heard this before, in different words. The house has a way of keeping its ghosts close. After some time, he turns his head toward you. "Do you think it remembers me?" he asks. You tilt your head slightly. "The room," he says. "Do you think the room knows I've come back?" You don't know. But you say yes. He nods, seemingly satisfied. He sits up again slowly. "I can't stay long," he says. "Didn't come for anything." He pauses, searching for the right word, fails to find it, and lets the silence do the rest. You rise as he gathers his coat and gloves. He doesn't leave a coin. Instead, he presses something into your hand, a small card with a smudged address. No name, just a street. If you ever need bread, he says, or somewhere to stand in the rain. Then he walks out. You don't follow. When the door closes behind him, the room feels exactly the same. You slip the card into your pocket and sit down again, just for a moment, just until your feet stop aching. Downstairs, the front door creaks. Another set of footsteps, and from the sound of them, quick, erratic, too light for a man. You know, it's not a client. It's someone else. Someone from before. Someone who hasn't been seen in months and once left behind a shoe and never came back for it. The footsteps barely touch the floor. A skittering patter, like a cat fleeing rain too fast and too familiar. You're still in the green room, sitting where the man with the smudged card left you, when the sound catches you off guard. It isn't the slow drag of a boot or the confident tap of a cane. It's urgency, half panic, half memory. You stand without thinking, your body recognizing the rhythm before your mind catches up. Downstairs, Nell calls out Clara, but it's not a question. It's a gasp. You leave the room and descend the stairs just as she appears in the hallway, clutching the doorframe with one hand and the hem of her skirt with the other. Her face is flushed, hair, loose cheeks, wind-burned. There's a smear of something across her sleeve, maybe soot, maybe something else. Her shoes don't match. One of them might be the one she left behind. She stops when she sees you, eyes, wide mouth parting, like she's about to apologize. But no words come. You haven't seen Clara since midsummer. She left without a word one evening, after a particularly long shift, slipping out sometime between the third client and the mop water. No note, just the missing shoe and a small tin of lavender salve no one claimed. You hadn't expected her back. No one had. Yet here she is, trembling barefoot on one side, the ghost of a girl now living again. Madame Lutchfield emerges from the back room, her expression unreadable. She doesn't scold. She never scolds. Instead, she steps forward, takes one look at Clara's face, and says, "Tea first." Clara nods, and it's only then she starts crying. Not loud, not messy, just silent tears that trail down her chin and vanish into the collar of her dress. She looks thinner than you remember, her collarbone sharp beneath the fabric, her hands twitching like they're searching for something to hold on to. She follows Madame to the kitchen, and you remain in the hallway, not sure whether to sit or stand. not sure if this is a homecoming or a retreat. Nell leans against the stair rail, arms crossed, watching the kettle whistle. Reckon she ran out of places to go, she mutters. You don't reply. Upstairs, the house creaks. You imagine the rooms adjusting the air, shifting to make space again. Clara's room hasn't been touched. Her things, what little there were never moved. No one else asked for it. You remember the last night she was here. She'd been talking about going somewhere near the coast someplace with sand and air that didn't smell like soot. She'd said it casually, like someone mentioning the weather, then laughed, like she didn't believe it herself. Now she sits at the table in the kitchen, cupping her hands around a chipped mug, steam rising into her face like a veil. Madame Lutchfield says nothing. She simply places a plate of bread in front of her and returns to her ledger. You watch from the hallway as Clara eats slowly, deliberately, like someone afraid the food might vanish if she looks away. When she finally glances up and sees you, she offers a half smile. Still here, she says. You nod. Yeah, still here. She nods back, then takes another bite. Later, she comes to sit in the parlor. Not in her old chair, Nell's taken that now, but beside the ficus, which is still wearing the shawl someone draped there 2 weeks ago. Clara folds her hands in her lap and leans her head back, eyes closed. It's quieter than I remember, she says. You glance around. It is. Maybe the hour. Maybe the mood. Maybe the house remembers her too. Where did you go, you ask? Not demanding, just wondering. She opens one eye. East. Followed a cart out of the city. Worked a bit. Cleaned floors. Sewed. Got sick. Got better. She pauses. They had chickens. You nod, unsure what else to say. The candlelight flickers. You realize you're still holding the card the man left earlier. You tuck it away. Clara looks over at you. Do you think we ever leave for good? She asks. You consider it. I think some do. I think most don't. She sighs long and tired and leans her head back again. I thought about you. And Nell. Even the ficus. She smiles faintly. Never thought I'd miss a fake plant. You chuckle under your breath. It misses you too. Madame Lutchfield appears again, holding a folded blanket. She sets it beside Clara without a word and returns to her office. Clara pulls it into her lap, fingers brushing the edges. Same one, she asks. Same one, you say. Outside, dawn is breaking. You can hear the sounds of the city, rousing the grind of a wheelbarrow, a dog barking 2 streets over the distant shriek of a kettle that might be a train or a teapot. Clara stands suddenly. "I should wash," she says. "Still smell like coal and regret." You watch her go. The others begin to stir. Nell stretches, yawning, one foot tucked beneath her. The ficus stands, as always. The air smells faintly of tea bread and something returning. You close your eyes for a moment, just long enough to let the morning settle. And just as your breath evens out, just as the city begins to hum through the walls, the front door opens again. This time, it's not a client. It's someone older, slower, carrying a bag. Someone who doesn't belong here, but knows someone who does. Someone looking not for a room, but for a name they used to know. He steps inside with the careful uncertainty of someone who hasn't entered such a place in decades, perhaps ever. The bag in his hand is small, worn, made of brown leather that's darkened at the edges from years of travel. He stands just beyond the doorway, scanning the room, not for comfort, but for recognition. His coat is clean, though the hem is damp with the morning mist, and the brim of his hat is pressed inward, as if nervously handled too often. He doesn't speak right away. You glance toward Madame Lutchfield, who remains at her table, quill in hand, not lifting her gaze from the ledger. She knows he is not here for her. The room falls into a respectful hush, the kind reserved for those who arrive not seeking, but remembering. He removes his hat, holds it to his chest. "I'm looking for a girl," he says. His voice is soft, hoarse, the kind worn down by long winters and longer silence. You rise, slowly. You've heard this before. Men who come not with names, but with stories, half-recalled faces, a pendant perhaps, or a promise never fulfilled. "What's her name?" you ask gently. He frowns, as if the word itself has weight. "Clara," he says. At that, Nell looks up sharply. You glance toward the hallway. Clara hasn't returned yet from the washroom. "She was here," he says. "Years ago, maybe. I don't know if she'd remember me, or want to." You step closer. "Why are you looking for her?" He hesitates, then opens the bag. Inside is a small wrapped parcel, cloth tied with twine. He doesn't offer it yet. "She's my niece," he says finally, or was. "Her mother. My sister died when Clara was young. I tried to keep track, but she ran. I heard she might have come here." You nod slowly. She was here. She is again. His shoulders drop, not in relief, but in the way people do when a question has been answered and replaced with another. You motion for him to sit, and he does on the edge of the chair, that always leans slightly left. The ficus sways faintly in a draft. She ran, he says again, quieter this time. Didn't blame her. Would have run myself if I were younger. His hands rest in his lap, wrinkled and red from cold. He looks older than he probably is, the kind of tired that seeps into bone. I don't know what I thought I'd find, he admits. Just that maybe she'd want this. He unties the cloth. Inside is a small framed photograph faded at the edges. A girl and a woman. Clara must have been 6, maybe 7. The woman is unsmiling, but proud, her hand on Clara's shoulder. The resemblance is unmistakable. He places the photo on the table, then withdraws a small paper envelope. She used to draw, he says. Little things. Mostly animals. Cats with too many tails. I saved some. You glance toward the hallway again, half expecting Clara to appear now. But the moment stretches. He doesn't ask what happened to her here. He doesn't need to. He looks around the parlor, the worn chairs, the quiet women, the candle soot on the mantel. She said she didn't want rescuing, he murmurs. Said she just wanted a place that didn't ask questions. You sit across from him, the photo between you. You may not get more than this, you say gently. She's not the same girl. He nods, not sadly, just understanding. Neither am I. A moment passes. Then footsteps return slower than before, bare against the stairs. Clara appears wrapped in a shawl, her hair, damp cheeks flushed from warm water. She stops when she sees him. No one speaks. The air tightens like a breath held too long. She doesn't run. She doesn't speak. Just walks forward, one step, then another, until she stands beside the table. She sees the photo, the drawings, the man. Her eyes widen, then narrow. Uncle, she says. He removes his hat again. Clara. They don't embrace. Not yet, but something softens in her face, something cautious and almost angry. Why now? She asks. I never stopped, he says. I just didn't know where to look. She sits slowly. Not close, not far. Her fingers touch the photo. She doesn't pick it up. I was scared, she says. I still am. He nods. So am I. The room stays silent around them. Nell sets down her broom. Madame Lutchfield closes the ledger. The ficus continues pretending to be real. You remain where you are, watching the moment stretch like thread that hasn't yet frayed. Clara doesn't cry. She just watches him, eyes wet, but unreadable. I can't go back, she says. Not yet. I didn't come to take you," he replies. "I just came to leave this." He pushes the cloth bundle toward her. She pulls it close, fingers brushing the edge of the frame. "Do you have somewhere to go?" she asks after a moment. "Not really," he says. "Just not here." She nods. That's enough. He stands a little slower than before. The bag now nearly empty. He places his hat back on his head. "You can write," she says. "If you want." He smiles faintly. "I do." Then he turns to leave. No embrace. No parting words. Just the soft creak of boots on the floor and the door closing behind him. Clara sits still. The room exhales. You move to sit beside her, but she shakes her head. "Just a minute," she whispers. You nod and step back. The candle flickers again. Outside, the wind shifts. The city groans its usual tune. Then, behind you, someone clears their throat. A client. Late, confused, maybe new. Someone who doesn't know that today the house remembers. He stands just inside the door, holding his cap in both hands, like it might fly off if he lets go. His coat is too new for this neighborhood, stiff at the shoulders, and creased only from being folded at the shop. He looks about 19, maybe 20, with the uncertain stance of someone trying very hard not to appear lost and failing. His eyes flicker across the room, landing briefly on the ficus, then darting away like it had caught him staring. Clara remains seated, her back straight, one hand still resting on the cloth-wrapped parcel. She does not look up, but her presence is a quiet anchor, now holding the moment steady. Madame Lutchfield rises with the grace of someone who's seen every type of visitor and knows exactly how this will unfold, though she'll let him discover it himself. She doesn't smile, but her voice is calm. Looking for someone, she asks. The young man opens his mouth, closes it, then nods quickly. I mean, yes. I think so. She gestures toward the chairs, the warmth of the hearth. Sit, if you like. Tell us what brings you. He hesitates, then steps forward, sitting on the edge of the chair, as if it might scold him for relaxing. His hands are shaking, but only slightly. I got this, he says, pulling a folded note from his pocket. It's creased and damp at one corner, clearly read and reread. He passes it to Madame Lutchfield, who opens it without surprise. She skims it, then nods once slowly. You're James, then? She asks. He nods. Jamie, usually? She hands the note back. And you're looking for Miss Ellen? His cheeks color. Yes. She was here. She wrote that if I ever had the nerve, I should come before the clock struck 10. It's past that now, but I thought... His voice trails off. You remember Ellen? She left in early spring, tall and quiet, always humming something tuneless while brushing her sleeves. She used to sit by the window, sketching names into the condensation when she thought no one noticed. She mentioned Jamie once, in that half-smiling way that girls use when they're not quite sure if they're hoping or mocking themselves. Madame Lutchfield watches him carefully, then turns to you. Green room. Wasn't it? She says. You nod. Jamie looks between you, both confused. She's not here anymore, Madame says gently. She left. But she left you this. She disappears behind the curtain and returns moments later with a small parcel, brown paper, tied with twine. Jamie takes it with reverence, holding it like something fragile. She's well? He asks. Madame nods. She's with a family now. A position in the country. Keeps chickens, apparently. A small laugh escapes him, more relief than amusement. She always said she hated chickens. They grow on you, you say, without thinking? He looks at you and smiles faintly. Maybe they do. He doesn't open the parcel yet. Instead, he holds it close, glancing toward the stairs. Is there somewhere I could sit? Just for a bit? Madame gestures again toward the fire. He sits, finally, letting the cap rest in his lap. You return to your own chair across from Clara, who now watches Jamie with quiet curiosity. The room settles into a lull, the kind that feels like the closing of a chapter and the soft beginning of another. Jamie doesn't speak again. He simply sits there, turning the parcel over slowly in his hands. You wonder what Ellen might have packed for him. Something small, surely a token, a note, maybe one of her drawn names in a sealed envelope. You'll never know, and that's fine. Some things are meant only for the people they're left to. Outside, the light grows stronger. The city is fully awake now, its clatter and steam pressing faintly through the glass. The ficus tilts slightly, reacting to a draft, or perhaps just shifting out of boredom. Clara leans forward at last. Jamie, she says. He looks up. Do you want tea? He nods, surprised. Yes, thank you. She disappears into the kitchen. Madame Lutchfield smiles behind her hand. You hear the kettle whistle the clink of cups. Nell returns from the back stairs, her sleeves rolled, hair pinned, cheeks flushed. She surveys the room and nods once. Busy morning, she mutters. Not even noon yet. You nod back. Busy, yes, but not in the usual way. Not the kind that leaves the sheets rumpled and the candle stubs. This is something slower, quieter. A tide turning, perhaps. Clara returns with a mug, hands it to Jamie, and sits beside him. He thanks her softly, both hands around the cup. He hasn't opened the parcel yet. He may not open it here. You suspect he'll carry it for days before letting himself see what's inside. And that, too, is fine. Madame returns to her ledger. Nell begins sorting linen. The clock ticks deliberate and slow. Outside, a bell rings, followed by the rumble of cartwheels on wet cobblestone. Then the door creaks open again. This time, it's a girl you've never seen before. Not young, not old, not dressed for work, not dressed for visiting. Just there. She closes the door behind her eyes, scanning the room. Not fearful, just waiting. And she's holding a letter. She stands just inside the door. The letter held carefully in both hands. Its edges worn soft from travel or nerves or both. Her coat is serviceable too long in the sleeves and belted tightly at the waist with buttons that don't quite match. There's a smudge of ink on her left thumb, and the hem of her skirt carries the tired dust of early walking. She doesn't move until Madame Lutchfield looks up. Her eyes, unreadable, her quill paused mid-stroke. The girl speaks, then, not loudly, but clearly. I was told to bring this here, for someone named Lutchfield. Her accent isn't quite from the city, something flatter, softened by long roads and quiet villages. Madame nods and extends her hand. The girl approaches slowly, placing the letter on the edge of the table, like she's setting down a fragile truce. She doesn't leave. She stands, waiting, eyes flicking from the ledger to the ficus to the boy with the cap, Jamie still sipping his tea, like it might answer something for him. Madame opens the envelope with a small knife, slides the single folded page free, and reads in silence. Her expression doesn't change, but when she finishes, she taps the letter twice against the wood, and then tucks it neatly into the drawer beside her. She looks up at the girl. From Margaret. The girl nods. Yes, ma'am. How is she? Still taking in the strays. A small twitch of amusement tugs at the corner of Madame's mouth. Good. That sounds like her. She gestures to the empty chair across from you. Sit. You've come far. The girl hesitates only a moment before lowering herself onto the cushion. Hands folded now in her lap, knuckles pink from cold. Clara watches her with a quiet kind of interest, the way one might watch a mirror, and try to remember if they once stood like that. "What's your name?" Clara asks. "Sylvie," the girl replies. "Margaret sent me on an errand. She said there might be work." Madame Lutchfield raises an eyebrow. "Here, or near enough," Sylvie says. She didn't say. Just gave me the letter and said, "Tell Lutchfield I remember the wallpaper and the cinnamon tea." That gets a real smile from Madame, now a rare thing, small and genuine. She always did exaggerate. The tea never had cinnamon, just cloves and wishful thinking. She nods slowly. "All right, Sylvie. We'll find something for you." Sylvie relaxes, but only slightly. Her eyes never quite stop moving. You recognize that look, the calculation, the soft edge of panic hidden behind a polite face. She doesn't ask questions, not yet. She's waiting to be told what she needs to know to understand the rules by watching others live them. Jamie finishes his tea and sets the mug down gently. "Would you like mine?" he asks, Sylvie gesturing toward the remaining biscuit on his saucer. She hesitates, then accepts it with a soft thank you. They don't speak again. They just sit, two strangers bound briefly by overlapping paths and shared silences. Madame Lutchfield pushes back from the table and rises. "I'll show you the upstairs," she says to Sylvie. "You'll take the small room for now." End of the hall, left of the linen press. Sylvie stands and follows, pausing only to nod at you, at Clara, at Jamie. She doesn't smile. She's not ready for that. Upstairs, the floor creaks beneath their steps. You picture the room narrow, with slanted ceilings and a view of the alley. Not much light, but it's warm and dry, and the window doesn't rattle. Clara shifts beside you. "She reminds me of you," she says. "Or maybe me. A bit." You nod. She'll settle. She'll have to. The ficus trembles slightly in the draft. Nell returns from the kitchen carrying a tray of mismatched spoons. "More company?" she asks. You gesture upstairs. "A letter, girl. From Margaret." Nell snorts. Figures. Margaret never lets go of a soul once she's met them, like a well-dressed spider. She sets the spoons on the counter and glances toward Jamie. "You staying long?" "Not sure," he replies. "Didn't plan on staying at all." She shrugs. Most of us didn't. The morning is fully broken now. Outside, the clatter of carts has given way to the occasional shout, the bark of a dog, the uneven beat of life continuing. Inside, everything smells faintly of soap paper and the ghost of cinnamon that never was. Sylvie's footsteps return lighter now, more assured. She descends the stairs with Madame just behind her. "She'll be useful," Madame says. She listens. Sylvie takes her place again in the chair across from you, eyes a little steadier now. "What happens now?" she asks. "You wait," Clara says. Then someone comes in. Then you learn what kind of place this is. And after that, then you decide if you'll stay. The door creaks again. A man enters, middle-aged, heavy coat hat pulled low. He smells faintly of matches and tobacco. He removes his gloves and looks around. His eyes land on you. He points. "You," he says. Upstairs, you stand, and Sylvie watches. Her hands are still in her lap, her knuckles still pink, but her eyes are calm. You follow the man up the stairs. Behind you, the house returns to its rhythm. And somewhere in the distance, a second letter waits to be delivered. He climbs the stairs ahead of you, not quickly, but with the steadiness of a man who knows where his feet should fall. His shoulders are broad under a thick wool coat that still carries the faint scent of a recent downpour. He doesn't speak, and you don't ask questions. The house is quiet now, filled with that particular kind of morning stillness that comes after the clatter of breakfast trays and before the scrape of midday boots. You lead him to the blue room, which hasn't seen use in 2 days, a rare stretch. The bed is neatly made. The candle replaced the window, still slightly fogged despite being shut. He enters first, removing his coat and draping it carefully over the back of the lone chair. He doesn't sit. Instead, he walks to the mantel and places a small item there, a matchbook, red and gold, the kind handed out by hotel bars and gambling halls. You glance at it, but don't speak. He notices. "It's not from here," he says. His voice is low, rough at the edges. "Detroit, or maybe Milwaukee. Hard to keep track." You nod once, then move to light the candle. He stops you. "Leave it," he says. "I don't like flame this early." You step back. He unbuttons his cuffs slowly, one at a time, his fingers thick, but careful, the motion deliberate. He's not in a rush, but he's not wasting time either. "Been walking since 4, he says. "The city's different in the dark. Quieter, but not softer." You make a small sound of agreement. He turns to you. Then his eyes, a pale gray, that catch the dull light from the window, just enough to seem almost blue. "You been here long?" he asks. You nod. "Long enough." He grunts, like that's what he expected. Used to come to places like this. Not here. Other cities. Same walls. Different wallpaper. He crosses to the bed, but doesn't sit. My father used to say, people don't change, just their addresses. He finally sits, hands on his knees. He wasn't wrong. You sit across from him, your back to the shuttered window. The air in the room smells faintly of lavender polish, and whatever he keeps in his coat pocket probably matches. You expecting someone else? You ask, nodding toward the matchbook. He shrugs. Nah, just like the color. Reminds me of a place where I lost some money and didn't mind. He leans back now, resting on one elbow, looking at the ceiling, like it might explain something. Ever get the feeling you've been somewhere before, even when you haven't? Sometimes. This room feels like a place I dreamed once. He closes his eyes. Or maybe just a place I imagined I'd die. The words aren't dramatic, just factual, like a man reading from an almanac. You wait. He doesn't move, just breathes slow and steady. After a long silence, he opens his eyes again. You don't talk much. Most don't want me to. He nods. That's fair? Noise isn't what I came for. He pulls a small object from his pocket. An old coin worn smooth, possibly brass or copper, hard to tell in this light. He holds it out to you. Found this in my brother's drawer after he passed. No idea where it's from. Thought maybe it meant something. Still don't know. But I carry it. You take it. Feel the weight of it in your palm. It's heavier than it looks, and the edges are rounded from time. No markings you recognize. You can keep it, he says. Maybe you'll figure it out. You nod, placing it gently in the pouch, with the thimble, the buttons, the cloth parcel. You always collect things, he asks. Just the ones people don't want to carry anymore. He laughs a dry sound. That's a good line. You should write that down. He stands again, stretches, rubs his neck. I won't stay long. Just needed to sit somewhere that wasn't a train seat. He puts his coat back on, smooths the lapel. What's your name? You pause, then give him one of the ones you don't use often. He nods. Figures. You look like someone who keeps a few names around. He walks to the door, but pauses before leaving. You ever head west? He says. There's a place on Main Street in Council Bluffs. Red awning. Doesn't serve coffee, but the soup's good. Tell them Walt sent you. Then he's gone. The matchbook still on the mantel. Its gold lettering, catching the pale daylight just enough to glint like a memory. You remain seated for a while, letting the room settle. The coin is still warm in your hand. Outside, you hear Nell calling for fresh linens and Madame's voice answering from the stairwell. Downstairs, Jamie is laughing softly uncertainly with Sylvie. Clara hasn't moved from her chair. You hear the door open again. Another visitor. No voice this time, just footsteps, slow and deliberate, and the faint sound of something metal clinking in a pocket. Someone who's been here before. Someone who left a question unanswered. Someone who might think they were forgotten. The footsteps stop just inside the door, followed by the soft chime of a pocket watch brushing against buttons or coins, some metal companion tucked into a waistcoat with more sentiment than value. You descend the stairs, still holding the old coin from Walt, its warmth now fading into the familiar chill of the house. The man standing in the doorway removes his hat, slowly revealing dark hair streaked with gray, combed carefully, as if this visit required ceremony. His coat is well made, but tired at the cuffs. There's a wet spot near the hem where the morning mist has done its work. His gloves remain on hands, clasped before him, like he's waiting for permission to move further. Madame Lutchfield rises without speaking, as if summoned not by the sound, but the air shifting in the room. She narrows her eyes slightly, then inclines her head. "Mr. Archer," she says. He smiles faintly. "Still remember the name. You're not easy to forget." He looks around the parlor, not as if admiring it, but measuring it against a version that lives in his memory. He spots Clara, nods once politely, then turns to you. His eyes rest a beat too long, searching for familiarity. "You were new the last time," he says. Or maybe I was old. You gesture toward the staircase. "Up, please." He follows his steps, deliberate but steady. You take him to the yellow room, seldom used, but favored by those who remember its pale wallpaper and view of the bakery's chimney. He enters and removes his gloves, placing them neatly on the table beside the worn armchair. The watch chain peeks from his vest pocket, gold, but dulled by time. He notices your glance. "Inherited it from a man who never learned punctuality," he says. "I wear it so I can lie and say I tried." You smile gently, stepping toward the fireplace. He waves you off. "No need. I won't stay long." He sits, hands folded, watching the dust catch the morning light in slow circles. "I came for an answer," he says, "though I suppose I've forgotten the question." You say nothing. This is how he speaks, like a man in conversation with shadows. "There was a girl," he continues. "Fair hair. Laugh like a door creaking open. She once told me I'd die in a place like this." You glance toward the chair opposite him. "Did you?" He chuckles. "Not yet." He reaches into his coat and retrieves a small parcel wrapped in a handkerchief. He places it on the windowsill, untouched. "She left this behind," he says. "I thought maybe she'd be back for it." She wasn't. What is it? A comb. Bone, not ivory. Cracked. Meant more to her than I ever did. He leans back, watching the pattern of cracks in the ceiling. Funny, the things we carry for other people. You sit, hands folded in your lap. The light through the curtain paints the walls in pale yellow stripes. Outside the bakery, chimney puffs thin clouds into the morning sky. "You've seen a lot of people come and go," he says. "Some come back. Some do. Do they ever say why?" You shake your head. Mostly not. Just that they were thinking of a room, or a voice, or the way the floor creaked. He smiles again. It does creak. Always has. He glances at the parcel. You should keep it, in case she comes. You nod and take the handkerchief, adding it gently to your growing collection. He stands, brushing off imaginary dust. "I'm due at the ferry. Thought I'd miss it, but I always planned to." "Will you be back?" you ask. He considers this. "Only if I forget not to." He moves toward the door, but pauses, pulling the watch from his pocket. "Still works," he says. "Not on time, but it ticks." He places it in your hand. Hold it a while. Let it lie. You hesitate. "Are you sure I don't need it anymore?" he says. "I've nowhere left to be late for." Then he's gone, leaving only the tick of the watch and the faint scent of pipe smoke behind. You hold the chain in your fingers, feeling the soft pulse of time, not quite keeping time. Downstairs, the front door creaks again. Someone enters, light-footed, humming softly. Not a stranger, not quite family. Someone with a satchel over their shoulder and a book clutched to their chest. Someone who once asked, "Do you believe in ghosts?" and didn't wait for an answer. The humming is tuneless and slightly off-key, the sort that never settles into a melody, but persists just enough to suggest contentment or distraction. You pause on the landing, the weight of the watch still in your palm, its faint ticking competing with the sound of someone setting down a satchel. The voice stops as the front door clicks shut behind them, and when you descend, you see her, Margot, or at least that was the name she used last time, though it's hard to say if it ever belonged fully to her. Her coat is dust-colored and fraying at the seams, the satchel heavy and pulling her shoulder slightly to one side. The book she clutches is thick and worn, edges, curled cover, soft with age. She notices you first and grins. "Still here," she says, "just like I hoped." You nod, not smiling, but not frowning either. And you, still wandering, she replies, placing the book carefully on the nearest chair, like a relic. But the streets are colder now. People don't look up like they used to. She begins removing her gloves, slowly, fingers curled, as if remembering something, one digit at a time. Do you still have the candle in the corner? Room we moved it to the mantel, you say. Safer. Shame, she mutters. I liked how it made shadows on the ceiling. She turns, surveying the parlor. Clara nods to her from the far end, and Jamie, now reading something borrowed from the kitchen shelf, looks up briefly and offers a quiet acknowledgement. Sylvie, from her spot by the window, watches Margot with the interest one reserves for stories that haven't yet revealed their endings. Tea, you ask? Eventually, Margot says, I want to sit first. She lowers herself into the same chair as before, the one she claimed 3 winters ago, and once draped with a shawl that has since migrated to the ficus. I brought something, she adds, tapping the satchel with her toe. Not for you. For the house? You raise an eyebrow. The house. Of course, she says, pulling the flap open and withdrawing a small tin box. Houses like this remember things. They collect like you do. So I figured it was time I gave something back. She opens the box carefully, revealing a handful of paper scraps, some with ink, faded almost to invisibility, others torn neatly from ledgers, one with a pressed flower sealed in wax. These are things people left with me, she explains. A name, a wish, a direction written in pencil and then forgotten. She places the tin on the side table beside the lamp. Now the house can keep them. Might be safer here. You nod, not because you understand exactly, but because it feels like the right response. Margot was always one for gestures. She never stayed long, but always returned with something she said didn't belong to her. You look different, she says suddenly. Tired, but less brittle. Long winter. And the watch, she asks, nodding toward your hand. A gift, you say, from someone who no longer minds the hour. She smiles at that. Best kind. She leans back, then, finally relaxing her gaze, drifting upward toward the ceiling, as if waiting for the shadow show that's no longer there. I dreamed of this place last week, she says. In the dream, the fireplace was speaking. Not words, just warmth that knew my name. Was it a good dream? No, she says. But it was familiar. The clock ticks on. The wind outside has calmed. Nell walks through the parlor with a tray of folded cloths, her pace steady, her eyes pausing only long enough to nod at Margot. Upstairs, A floorboard shifts, followed by the sound of someone pacing softly. Likely Clara, restless again. Jamie turns a page. Sylvie finishes a biscuit and brushes crumbs from her skirt. Margot closes her eyes for a moment, breathing in through her nose, like she's taking inventory of scents and sounds only she can detect. Still smells like rose water and steam, she murmurs. And ink. We changed the soap, you say? Must be the wallpaper, remembering the old kind. She chuckles softly. Walls always remember what they were cleaned with, or what they hid behind. You sit beside her, not speaking. She doesn't need noise. After a while, she opens her eyes again. I won't stay long, she says. Didn't even mean to stop. Just ended up nearby and felt the pull. People say that you reply, that they feel drawn. It's not the place, she says. It's the waiting, the way silence here has shape. She reaches into the folds of her coat and removes something small, an earring, silver, the back bent slightly. Found this behind the fireplace at a boarding house in Shoreditch. Thought maybe it came from here, or maybe it wants to. You take it gently, adding it to the other objects in your pocket, the pouch now heavy with history. Do you ever throw anything away? She asks. No, you say. Only what we can't carry. She nods slowly. That's what I thought. Outside, the bells of the distant church begin to toll. Noon, or something close to it. The sound is muffled, but steady, reminding everyone that time is still passing, even here. Then the door creaks again. A pause. Then the slow, dragging steps of someone older. A woman this time, by the weight of her gait, by the careful way the air shifts to make room for someone who hasn't crossed this threshold in many years. The steps are unhurried, almost ceremonial. Each one tapping softly against the floorboards, like a question, asked and left unanswered. You turn slightly, watching the figure appear in the doorway, tall, straight-backed, dressed in a green wool coat that has seen careful mending at the cuffs and collar. Her hat is simple black with a small feather tilting just enough to catch the light, and her gloves are the kind stitched by hand, not fashion, but habit. She stands just inside, surveying the room with an air not of judgment, but of recollection, like someone measuring the distance between a memory and its echo. Her face, though lined by age, holds its structure cheekbones, prominent eyes, clear mouth, set in a line that could tilt toward kindness or steel. She removes one glove slowly, then the other, and tucks them into her handbag with the precision of someone who values order over speed. Margot leans slightly in her chair, eyes narrowing just a fraction. Clara looks up, her posture shifting as if trying to place a shadow in a room she thought she knew. Madame Lutchfield closes her ledger, the motion deliberate, then rises with a grace reserved for rare occasions. "Mrs. Elverton," she says with a nod. The woman inclines her head in return. Still keeping the windows clean, she replies. Her voice is lower than expected, firm, the kind trained in parlors and drawn-out farewells. Madame gestures to the seat near the fireplace, the one usually avoided in summer. "You'll have tea if the blend hasn't changed. Not much does here." The widow Elverton, now confirmed, crosses the room and sits without haste. Her back doesn't touch the chair's spine, posture held not out of pride, but muscle memory. "It's warmer than I recall," she says, surveying the walls. Though perhaps the walls have become used to listening. "They do that," you murmur from your place still beside Margot. Elverton turns her gaze to you, studying. "You weren't here," she states. "Last time." You nod. "I've been here since." She accepts that, without comment, unfolding a small cloth from her bag and revealing a silver locket, oval and unpolished, set beside a folded note and what appears to be a railway stub. She places these items in a neat row on the low table before her. "I've come to leave these," she says. "They no longer belong to me." No one questions her. The house understands the offering. The locket bears initials too faded to read, without tilting it into sunlight. The note is sealed with a pressed leaf dry, but intact. The train stub is marked from a station closed 10 years past. Madame Lutchfield retrieves the teapot, pours slowly into a china cup that rarely sees use. Elverton receives it with both hands and sips without blowing on it. "When I was a girl," she says, setting the cup back with a soft clink, "I used to believe houses like this were temporary way stations, not destinations. I thought I'd pass through and leave nothing behind." "Did you?" asks Clara. Elverton glances at her eyes steady. "I left more than I meant, less than I should have." Sylvie watches quietly from the windowsill, a finger resting on the edge of Margot's tin box. Jamie, still thumbing through his book, slows his page, turning subtly, listening. "I once gave something to a girl here." Elverton continues. "A comb. Not valuable, just bone carved with violets. I told her it was only a thing, but she took it like it meant something." Your hand shifts toward your apron, remembering the parcel on the windowsill. "It came back," you say. "Someone brought it. A man." Elverton doesn't smile, but something behind her eyes warms faintly. That would have been Archer. He had a habit of returning things he wasn't sure he'd taken. She finishes her tea and places the cup down, not in the saucer, but beside it. I don't know what I expected to find, but I wanted to sit in the room again. The yellow one, if it's free. It is, says Madam. It remembers you. Elverton nods. I'll stay until the evening. That should be enough. She gathers her gloves, but leaves the 3 items on the table, rising with the same deliberate motion she entered with. If someone asks after me, she says, pausing at the stair, tell them I was on time for once. They never ask, says Madam gently. Elverton smiles a flicker, then vanishes up the steps. The parlor settles again, the fire cracking gently. The locket glints once before dimming. Margot exhales softly. She once read poetry aloud on Thursdays, she says. Badly, but with conviction. Do you think she'll sleep? Sylvie asks. No, you say. But she'll lie still. Outside, the light has shifted. Not quite afternoon. Not yet dusk. The kind of hour where time feels stretched, like the shadow of a tree across a fence. The door opens once more, barely audible. A boy enters this time, younger than Jamie, holding a book too large for his hands, eyes wide, and the unmistakable look of someone searching for a name he's only ever read about. He doesn't close the door behind him. Not fully. It remains slightly ajar, letting in a thin shaft of light and a sliver of outside air that smells faintly of coal dust and soap. The boy is no older than 15, maybe younger, though he wears the sort of serious expression that suggests he's trying very hard to appear older. His boots are too big, the laces doubled around the ankles, and his coat, corduroy, 2 sizes too large, hangs from his frame like a borrowed history. He carries the book with both hands, pressed flat to his chest like a shield. Its spine is cracked, and the title, what remains of it, is illegible. You can see the edges of the old library stamps, the kind faded from too much handling, and there's a tear in one corner of the cover, exposing the cloth binding beneath. He steps inside with cautious reverence, glancing at each person, as though checking against a memory. Sylvie shifts slightly in her chair, curious, but reserved. Clara watches him, then looks away, as if to grant him the dignity of pretending not to notice the way his lip trembles ever so slightly. Jamie puts his book down and rests his elbows on his knees, studying the boy, the way one studies a mirror, with unfamiliar scratches. Margot simply says, "Don't let the wind shut the door. It always startles the ficus." The boy turns, presses the door closed, and stands still for a moment too long, as if collecting courage from the floorboards. Then he approaches Madame Lutchfield's desk, removing a paper from his coat pocket, folded many times, edges soft and nearly translucent. He offers it without words. Madame takes it, unfolds it, scans the contents. Then she looks at him with something not quite surprise. "You're from Dalry Lane." He nods. "They sent me. Said she might be here. She, the one who wrote the margins," he says. "The book belonged to her." Madame folds the paper and slides it into her ledger. "That book?" she asks, nodding to the one in his arms. "It's not from our library." He looks down, suddenly unsure. She wrote her name in it, or someone's name. "I found it in a crate behind the bake shop. Pages were dry." You rise from your chair and move closer. The book is heavy, older than expected, bound in navy cloth, with marbled end papers. A name is scrawled inside the front cover, ink faded to brown, and beneath it a note in delicate script. "If found, return to the yellow room with warmth." Clara steps forward, then brushing a strand of hair from her face. She peers at the writing. "That's Elverton's hand," she says softly. "But that's not her name." "Then who, you ask?" "Her sister," Clara replies. "She used to come on Wednesdays. Never stayed. Left the room scented like rosemary and paint." The boy looks down at the book, as if expecting it to explain something. "It talks about stars," he says, "and cities that don't exist anymore." She marked passages in the back. There's one about falling asleep in a borrowed dress. He holds it out to you. You take it, feeling the weight, the grain of the cover beneath your fingertips. "What do you want us to do with it?" "Keep it," he says, "or give it to the person it's waiting for." "And you?" you ask. "Who sent you?" He hesitates, then shrugs. "I don't know their name. Just said to bring it here. Said this house eats stories. Thought maybe it was hungry." A pause, then Margot says, "It never stops being hungry. But it digests slowly." Madame gestures for the boy to sit. He does awkwardly, his knees too high, hands in his lap. Clara returns to her chair, and Jamie slides the tray of remaining biscuits toward the newcomer. The boy takes one without a word. The fire cracks softly. Outside, the sky has turned the shade of dull pewter, the kind of gray that absorbs sound. The book rests on your lap now, and as you thumb through its pages, you see the markings underlined. Sentences, exclamations in the margins, sketches of constellations with arrows pointing to places labeled almost home and not yet. The handwriting changes halfway through. 2 hands. 2 people. A conversation stitched into parchment. You close the book and place it on the mantel beside the matchbook. The boy watches every movement. "Can I come back sometime?" he asks. "Even if she's not here." "You already did," Madame says. "Most do." The boy leans back, eyes drifting to the ceiling. "This place is quieter than I thought it would be." "It waits," Sylvie says. "That's all it does. And sometimes it listens." He nods, though it's unclear if he fully understands. But he's comfortable now in that way children are, when they know the room will not demand anything of them yet. You return to your chair, the book still warm in your memory. The boy begins to hum again, just under his breath. Then from the kitchen, the sharp rattle of metal, a spoon dropped, maybe a pan, followed by laughter. And then the faint sound of singing low and rhythmic from someone upstairs. Not for performance, not for company, just for remembering. The singing continues soft and slightly uneven, the kind of song one hums while folding linens or stirring something too slowly. It carries just enough melody to be familiar, but not enough to place a tune like steam rising from the edge of memory. The boy, now half curled in the oversized chair, stops humming and tilts his head toward the ceiling, listening. Margot leans her cheek against her palm, her eyes half closed. That voice, she says it used to belong to someone who wore blue silk slippers in winter. Said wool made her itchy. Clara shifts in her seat, her brow creasing. "I thought she went west." "She did," Margot replies, "but people wander. Silk, though that kind of memory, stays behind longer than the feet it warmed." Sylvie rises quietly and begins to arrange the objects on the side table. The locket, the folded note, the comb, and now the book, all set in a gentle row, like offerings to a house deity, with no name and many ears. Jamie stands too. Not for any particular reason, just following a rhythm that isn't dictated by speech or purpose. He moves toward the base of the stairs and pauses, listening like a boy outside a chapel. The voice upstairs continues, now drawing out a line with a trailing note not quite in key, but heavy with intention. It's not a performance. It's a kind of remembering aloud. Then silence. Not sharp, but fading. A natural rest. You rise and make your way to the stair, brushing your hand along the banister. The wood is warm from daylight, cool underneath. You ascend slowly, each step familiar, and at the landing, you pause catching the scent of something faint lavender, maybe, or old ink. The yellow room door is closed. You don't knock. You simply wait, as you've learned to do. Then it opens not wide, just a crack. A hand appears, delicate fingers, long nails, short and clean. The voice that follows is clear, unembellished. I wasn't sure it would still be here. You answer, without raising your voice. It was waiting. The door opens wider. The woman is older now, but not diminished. Her hair is pinned loosely, a few strands falling around her face. She wears a robe of faded green, the kind once meant for hosting guests who no longer visit. I left something, she says, and found other things in its place. They've been kept. She steps aside, letting you in. The yellow room is unchanged. Window, cracked just enough to stir the curtain. Candle stub on the mantel chair, with the cushion that never sits quite straight. The bed is made, but the coverlet is wrinkled from someone having rested there recently. On the table by the window rests a teacup untouched, and beside it an envelope addressed to no one. "Did anyone ask after me?" she says. "Yes," you reply, "but not by name." She sits in the chair, hands folded, her eyes drifting to the corner where the light fades earliest in the afternoon. "I dreamed about this room," she says, more than once. In the dream, I was smaller, or the room was larger, and there was always someone playing a violin in the next room badly. No violin, you say, just the wind. She smiles faintly. That's enough. She lifts the envelope and offers it to you. Give this to whoever needs it. Or don't. Maybe just leave it under the stairs. You accept it without looking inside. What about you? You ask. What do you need? Just to sit, she says. For a while? Maybe finish the song. Was it yours? No, she replies. But I borrowed it once. It's been echoing ever since. You leave her there, the door not quite shut. As you descend, the house feels warmer, more still. The boy is asleep now, one hand still resting on the book's corner. Jamie is leaning against the mantel, and Sylvie has moved the tin to a higher shelf, as if giving it elevation will help its contents settle better. Margot is scribbling in the margins of a paper she found folded into the cushion of her chair. Clara stirs a cup of tea she hasn't sipped. The fire crackles a quiet punctuation mark in the day's rhythm. Then the bell above the door rings a rare sound, used only when someone forgets to close it gently. A gust of outside air enters sharp, with the scent of pavement and wet paper. A man steps through tall, with an uneven gait. He carries no bag, only a small cloth bundle tucked under one arm and a folded map in the other hand. His shoes are scuffed, and his hat bears the imprint of too many nights spent pressed beneath a pillow. He doesn't speak, just stands there, eyes scanning, looking not for a person, but for a moment he misplaced long ago. He stands at the threshold, the soft creak of the door marking his entrance as something both final and tentative. His gaze sweeps the room with the kind of careful scrutiny one reserves for places visited in dreams or half-remembered stories. The cloth bundle under his arm shifts slightly as he moves, revealing the worn texture of the fabric, threadbare in places, but stitched with care. The folded map in his other hand is marked with smudged ink lines that trace paths and crossroads, names scrawled in faded script. You step forward quietly, the worn coin still heavy in your pocket, and the weight of the house settling around you like a familiar cloak. He looks at you, then eyes deep and steady, as if seeing not just the person, but the collection of moments and memories gathered here. "I'm looking for a place," he says softly. "Or maybe a time. I'm not sure which anymore." You nod, because that's a question often asked here and rarely answered. This house remembers both, you say. Sometimes they come tangled. He unfolds the map, slowly smoothing the creases with fingers that tremble just slightly. "I've been chasing a story," he admits, "one that started long before me and might end long after." The lines on the paper catch the light, roads looping back, rivers crossing and recrossing dots, marking towns, both real and imagined. It's not just geography, he says. It's memory and loss. You lead him to the fireplace, where the last embers glow faintly. Many who come here are chasing pieces, you say, pieces of themselves or of others they've lost. He sets the bundle down carefully on the table and pulls from it a small wrapped object. Unfolding the fabric reveals a silver locket oval, unpolished, the kind that carries stories in its tarnish. "I found this," he says, voice low, "in a drawer belonging to a woman I never really knew. She left it behind when she vanished. I was told it might be here." You trace the rim with a finger, feeling the cool metal. "It's part of this place now," you say. He sits slowly, folding the map and setting it aside. "I'm tired of running," he confesses. "Not from people, but from time, from moments I can't hold on to." You understand. The house breathes around you, both a quiet witness to too many such moments. He pulls a chair beside you and watches the flame flicker, shadows dancing across the walls. Do you ever wonder what happens when no one remembers? He asks. When a story fades, then the house holds it. You reply, until someone comes back. His eyes close briefly. I hope someone finds my story before it's too late. The room grows warmer, or maybe that's just the way the fire catches the evening light. Outside, the city hums faintly the distant clatter of carts and the soft murmur of voices threading through narrow streets. You sit together, the locket resting between you, a silent testament to the lives that intersected here. The clock on the mantel ticks steadily, each second a heartbeat, each minute a breath. The door opens quietly once more, and the house listens, waiting as a new presence steps inside a figure, neither new nor old. Someone who knows the rhythm of footsteps and the weight of whispered names. The night unfolds gently, like the turning of a page, and the story continues.